a little less formal this go round. Include you in the lighting of the candle. Well, behind the scenes action. This is new. I've not used this incense before. Some magical lady is going to a community situation in New Mexico. Had to get rid of a bunch of magic shit. Gave it to my wife. It's the first time I've used any of the incense. Smells delicious, like roses. Rosebud. Citizen Kane? Nobody? Alright. For real though. Holy Wand. Mars and Saturn. Rowan staff. The Sun and Neptune. I believe I saw somewhere that Uranus was involved, potentially. As it typically is. Let's read some Beijing. Two heads, one tail, Young Yin. I've been sick for about 2 straight weeks, maybe a week and a half. So pardon the sniffles. All right, broken line. My mom's sewing needles are here. And the glasses. I don't wear glasses to this. Love you, Mom. Two tails, one head. Young Yang. Roughly solar plexus. Tibetan bell. Can't remember the note. 2 heads, 1 tail, Yang Yin. This first trigram is the trigram Con, water. I think even in I Ching terms, it kind of represents the unconscious. Danger, need for solitude. Two heads, one tail, Yang Yin. Love you, Mom. Two heads, one tail, Yang Yin. It's a heart chakra singing bowl. One is the third eye, and this one is the root. Three tails. Old Yin. Right, before we get too crazy into this, I don't know why I've been having Haindl. I don't know how you say his last name, honestly. It's a little smeary, pardon that. But this is my go-to tarot deck. I use this for year ahead spreads. Don't ask me what my current month card is, but last month was Alchemy. And this month, well, let's share with you, is Rowan. But I've heard Witch and Scythe had a really great take on the Ten of Swords, which was helpful. But this is the card I wanted to focus on. This is the Chariot card in the Haindl deck, and it's a little bit terrifying. I want to read to you through Rachel Pollack's book that she released for Haindl's tarot card deck under the Chariot. The number 7 traditionally means victory or triumph. As 3 plus 4, it hints at a unity of the Empress and the Emperor. The Hebrew letter for trump 7 is cheth, which means fence, especially a fence enclosing a field. The image suggests cultivation, the human mind taming nature. But just as a fence implies the safe area it encloses, so it also implies the world beyond the fence. In earlier times, with so much of nature wild, towns literally existed within fences, walls protecting people from wild animals as well as human enemies. With the current human mastery over so much of nature, we tend to think of the whole world as safe, mapped out, understandable, but we still exist inside the fence. Existence remains vast and mysterious, even terrifying. For if something happens that strips away the fixed ideas of what we call reality, if for a moment we find ourselves outside the fence, then a fear rises up from somewhere so deep inside that except in such a moment we are unaware of it. The traditional chariot usually symbolizes the fence of civilization, controlling intelligence, as some commentaries call it. As number 7, the card represents a victory of human will over the ordinary problems of life. It remains then for later cards, such as the moon, to once again go beyond the known areas. The Haindl tarot retains the idea of will, but carries it further, showing the confrontation of willpower with fear. The self, the figure in the boat, rides on the surging sea of life, driven by the primal beast experienced as just over the shoulder, just out of sight, and yet the figure remains calm, unshaken. For the rune, we find Hegel, H, the hailstone, the pattern of the universe. This again takes us beyond the usual theme of civilization, while keeping the idea of the chariot as the ability to bring a sense of order to the chaos of life. Hegel also links the chariot to the Empress and the Wheel of Fortune. Hegel is similar to the German word heilig, or holy. If we look at the runes on the devil and the tower, we will see that Hegel joins the two of them. Since those runes mean man and woman, Hegel is actually androgynous. As the primal pattern, it returns to the state before male and female became split. The shape also unites above and below, heaven and earth. As the H rune, Hegel also connects the card personally to Hermann Haindl, who lives in Hauptstrasse in the town of Hofheim. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing any of that correctly. We will see in a moment that he created this image as one of the statements of his own life. Hermann Haindl was born on 9/30/27. Each of these numbers connects to 3. The Empress 9 is 3 times 3. 30 is a form of 3. 27 is 3 times 3 times 3. The numbers reduced add up to 21, the universe. And Hermann's house number, which of course also reduces to 3. Also 3 plus 4, the 4-letter H's in an artist's name and address equals 7, the number of the card in the rune Hegel. Anyway, the astrological sign is Cancer, whose symbol is the crab. The connections to the sea of the unconscious become more emphasized in the Haindl version of the card, where the chariot rides the waves. The crab's hard shell protects the vulnerable inside in the same way that the charioteer is protected by his psychic fence. Cancer is ruled by the moon. We see here a lunar crescent below Hegel. Many of the themes developed in this trump usually do not emerge in other tarot decks until the moon. The element is water, symbolizing life and the unconscious. Many versions of this card show a Roman chariot standing on the edge of a riverbank, often without wheels. The gentle river shows the chariot's mastery over his emotions. The lack of wheels indicates the solidness of his success in life. The Haindl tarot changes all this. The image becomes more powerful, yet more disturbing at the same time. Of all the trumps, the chariot stands out as the card that most evokes myth. It exists in a visionary world of its own imagination, reaching deeply into mystery and power. We see a boat with wheels rushing through a rough sea. The boat is red, the color of energy. A red glow surrounds the figure standing in the boat. The boat carries huge blocks of stone, pitted with holes to indicate great age. They help give the picture an archaic quality, a sense of experience older than civilization. The stone appears in blocks, like the blocks used in creating the pyramids. Esoteric versions of the chariot often show a pair of sphinxes instead of horses. Like the symbol of the fence and like the pyramids themselves, the carved stones represent human mastery over nature, and yet we get no sense here that the person has conquered nature. The courageous mind, and the card is an emblem of courage, faces the world in all its power, seeking mastery over the self rather than the environment. The bottom of the stones appears to melt, turning into waves as the boat rushes forward. This unites the two female elements, earth and water. We see a similar hint in the boat's wheels, as if it travels on dirt as well as the sea. Many mythologies tell us how land emerged originally out of the ocean. The Bible describes how God separated the waters to create the world. Above the stone stands a human being. Traditionally, the charioteer is a man, though in some very early decks, we see a woman. And the card signifies masculine willpower. Though the card represents his own experience, Haindl wished to stress that the qualities shown here applied to women as well. Therefore, he deliberately made the figure androgynous. While working with this card, I showed it to several women friends and asked for their reactions. Each of them assumed the figure was female. Despite the mad rush of the boat and the fire surrounding the human, the figure stands unshaken, arms out to indicate openness to life. Above and behind the human appears the giant head of a mythical beast, a mixture of boar and wolf. It rushes forward from a great distance, its mouth open like a black hole. We see the hint of a second pair of eyes below the main pair. The lower left eye, however, is the head of the charioteer. A violet glow surrounds the boar's head. Violet belongs to the crown chakra, the most developed level of consciousness. See also justice, and especially the hanged man. We might think of it as the color furthest away from the dark beast. However, if we truly confront our deepest fears and instincts, we may discover them as a source of the energy which can become transformed into spirituality. The crown is the seventh chakra. 7 signifies spiritual victory. On the right-hand side, below Hegel, at the level of the top of the animal's head, we see a crescent moon. If we look closer, we can see the whole circle described by the moon, with a star in the dark center. This image, repeated from the magician, recalls the famous yin-yang symbol, showing the constant interchange between light and darkness, action and stillness. In most tarot decks, the charioteer holds together 2 horses or sphinxes, one black, one white. Hermann Haindl has described the chariot as his card. It describes his sense of being hunted by time, a phrase he used when we talked about the picture. This means mortality. For having reached the age of 60, Haindl works with an urgency to make his statement to the world. Therefore, we see speed in the card, the boat rushing forward, carried by the sea, symbol of emotion, of life, and therefore the constant presence of death. In Walt Whitman's great poem, Out of the Cradle, Endlessly Rocking, the young poet asks the sea to whisper the word final, superior to all. The waves answer with the low and delicious word death. Deep in our minds, we all carry the knowledge that we may die at any moment. Most of us, for most of our lives, banish this awareness, acting as if we will live forever. As we grow older, the awareness pushes up at us, though we try not to think about it. Haindl, I don't know how to say his last name, I apologize, confronted this knowledge very early in life. As a teenager, with very little political or spiritual awareness, he entered the German army in World War II. He found himself in a Russian prisoner of war camp, where for several years he never knew if he would live from one day to the next. 4 times his captors forced him to dig his own grave. Each time they might have carried out the threat. Haindl does not recall this experience to show himself in any special light, and certainly not to excuse the Germans' own crimes in the war years and before. He only recognizes it as one of the sources of his knowledge. The figure in the boat, calm and unshaken, shows us the hope that we can master our fears, master our mortality, use these things as sources of energy and understanding. The boat symbolizes this ability to overcome fear. Through boats, human beings have made the dangerous sea a road and a source of food. The Egyptians traveled the Duat in a boat. The afterlife was often imaged with a god or a pharaoh, I believe, on a boat with several people rowing it. Let's see here. The seas retain their power, but boats enable people to use that power. The stones, too, signify human achievement. According to most archaeologists, the Egyptian pyramids were built as giant tombs. We might describe them as an attempt to deny death by making it both monumental and as much like life as possible. The Egyptians filled their tombs with possessions and even food, as if the dead person would continue a perfectly normal existence in the next world. In this card of the chariot, we see less of a denial. The charioteer does not hide from the sea, but travels over it. In death, we will look at the Egyptian idea of death as transportation. The beast emphasizes the card's mythic quality, not an actual animal, but something in us represented by the figure of an animal. It rushes forward like some long-buried terror rising to the surface in a moment of panic. It signifies our deepest fears, unnameable and wild, below the conscious mind and the safety of civilization. The mouth opens to remind us of the child's terror of darkness. The beast appears behind the shoulder in situations where archaic fears arise, say walking alone in a dark wood. People often sense something just over the shoulder, just out of sight. When a shaman begins her or his perilous journeys to the land of the spirits, the teacher often warns against looking behind. Whatever you hear or feel behind you, the teacher might say, do not look over your shoulder. In the Orpheus legend, Orpheus travels to the land of the dead to bring back Eurydice. She may follow him, but only if he doesn't look back until they have reached the outside. Orpheus looks over his shoulder and loses Eurydice forever. I don't know if I'm saying these names accurately yet. The stories tell us that he looks because of impatience or a fear that Eurydice hasn't come. But maybe he looks because something follows him, and it might not be Eurydice. The beast may symbolize the shaman's confrontation with terror, but it also symbolizes mastery. For when the traveler completes the journey, he or she will meet a guardian, a spirit being in the form of an animal. In the ancient tribal culture of Europe, every community counted on the protection of its totem. The idea of archaic terror usually comes in the card of the moon, number 18, and therefore one of the final triumphs. By bringing it up to number 7, the Haindl Tarot stresses the necessity of recognizing fear and overcoming it. Traditionally, the chariot triumphs over daylight challenges, building a career, finding a place in the world, creating family. The Haindl chariot speaks to us of a nighttime triumph, the human will confronting its deepest fears. This theme of confrontation forms only half a truth. For the other half, a sense of unity with life taking us beyond fear, we look to the Hanged Man, where the theme of death returns. But the chariot shows us something very real. To become a whole person, to master our lives, we need that shamanic victory. As I said, the bottom trigram of our primary hexagram and our supporting hexagram will be Con, which is broken, solid, broken. Con is deep water, flowing and formless. He is the complement of Li, dark where Li is bright, unconscious to her sharp lucidity, and represents a more fluid, intuitive, and emotional way of perceiving. This is danger, exposure, and solitude, and the need to respond with courageous self-reliance when confronted by the haunting unknown. Water is the middle sun, situated in the north, associated with midwinter and midnight. The top trigram of our primary hexagram will be read as broken, 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 which is Kun, earth. Kun is earth, open to receive and support what comes to her, providing for its full development. She makes inspiration manifest, gives it form, and sustains its growth. Earth is available to be used, ready to lend her strength to the work without limit. She protects and accepts all things in their totality, present and potential, in an unconditional embrace. Earth is mother, found in the southwest, in the harvest time of late summer and early autumn. This reminds me of Earth. It's Kyanite. Apparently it represents all of the chakras. Kind of looks like Earth. I dropped it earlier and thankfully it didn't break, but it did scuff this part. Usually when I drop something, I feel like it's significant. I also dropped this. This is clear fluorite, but it didn't break either. Anywho, moving right along. Our primary hexagram is Kun Earth above Kan Water, which gives us hexagram 7. Once our 6th line transforms from an old yin to a young yang, it will give us a trigram of broken solid. This is Gen Mountain. The mountain is still. It is a limit where you must stop. Gen brings each cycle to an end, defining a space where we can recognize, assimilate, and complete our experience. He creates a personal still center amid change, where we can retreat for perspective and a firm foundation for new growth. He is well-grounded, confident, and of independent spirit. He is still and knows. Mountain is the youngest son, child of maturity. In the cycle of directions and seasons, he is the northeast, late winter, approaching spring, the pivot between cycles. So, Gen Mountain above Kan Water gives us hexagram 4. We'll be getting the titles of our hexagrams from I-ming's Taoist I Ching, which he wrote in 1796 as a Taoist adept. He wrote a very alchemical I Ching commentary, and we will be reading from it third, starting with Hilary Barrett, moving on to James Dekorne, and then ending off with I-ming. Hexagram 7 is the army. Using the primordial to repel conditioning. Using the real to get rid of the false. And then our supporting hexagram, which puts our primary hexagram in a broader context and influence the direction of travel, an underlying issue that has to do with you and your relationship to it all. Hexagram 4 is darkness, starting yin convergence, making unruly yin submit, integrating with the world yet preventing mundanity from taking over. Negatively, it represents obscurity, unknowing. Positively, it represents innocence, also represents stopping in danger. Sounds ominous. All right. To understand the question that we bring to the I Ching, when we consult the oracle, we will need to understand, well, first off, that question is always going to have the general context of how can I act in creative relation with the spirits or forces shaping this moment of time. The way we understand that will be figured out once we know how our reading works together. The key to understanding a reading is to know your way around its main components, how they fit together, and the different roles they play. If your reading includes changing lines, then you will need to understand primary hexagram, relating hexagram, and changing lines together. The two hexagrams in conversation with one another map out your whole answer. The primary hexagram shows you quite directly what your answer involves. The relating hexagram generally describes what the answer is about for you. It sets the primary hexagram in a broader context, an influence, a direction of travel, an underlying issue that has to do with you and your relationship to it all. If the two hexagrams map out a landscape for you, then the changing lines stick a pin in the map to say you are here, or at least here are some places you may find yourself. They are the immediate answer to your question. As the most specific, focused part of the reading, their message always takes precedence over all other elements. For example, the primary hexagram might describe a reassuringly secure situation, but a changing line could warn how insecure your position is within it. Our primary hexagram 7 from Hilary Barrett's I Ching, Walking Your Path, Creating Your Future, which is a nice starter I Ching commentary, but also quite profound. Hexagram 7 she calls also the army. Key questions. What are you aiming for? How can you get more from your strengths? With all your efforts, are you creating the life you want? Oracle. The army, with constancy. Mature people, good fortune. No mistake. When there is cause, the ruler raises an army. This is a time when everything revolves around a central objective. Inner and outer resources are realigned and ordered in accordance with it. It's important that a mature leader take responsibility, not least so that intensity of focus does not become blinkered vision or pure belligerence, turning everything that is not the goal into the enemy. Balancing the drive to get it done with a measured, disciplined approach allows you to achieve your objective effectively and with less collateral damage. Good fortune, without mistake. Image. In the center of the earth is a stream, the army. A noble one accepts the people and gathers together crowds. The stream within the earth flows strongly because the earth accepts and absorbs all the water that falls on it. A noble one builds an army with the same open acceptance. You can find your greatest strength in the flow of your whole self by recruiting all your different character traits and hidden underground emotions. Sequence. The army follows from hexagram 6, arguing. Arguing naturally means that crowds rise up, and so the army follows. The army means crowds. First, you react with indignation against the status quo. Then you begin to organize a way to change it. Crowds of people, energies, and resources gather around that original focal point of grievance. The emotions that began as mere reactive indignation become an inner reserve of strength. Pair. The army forms a pair with hexagram 8, seeking union. Seeking union means delight. The army means grieving. The choices of seeking union are made freely, following a natural affinity as the streams flow together over the earth. Those of the army whose work is needed to prepare for seeking union are driven by necessity. The ends must justify the means. When the army marches on its objective, look out for casualties and ruined fields. And our supporting hexagram 4, which puts our primary hexagram in a broader context and influence, a direction of travel, an underlying issue that has to do with you and your relationship to it all. I-ming called it darkness. Hilary Barrett calls it not knowing. Key questions. What don't you know? What if you didn't need to know all the answers now? How can you learn from experience? Oracle. Not knowing, creating success. I do not seek the young ignoramus. The young ignoramus seeks me. The first consultation speaks clearly. The second and third pollute the waters. Polluted, and hence not speaking, constancy bears fruit. Not knowing literally means being covered over, like a young animal hidden away in the undergrowth by its mother. So you are ignorant and cannot see as far as you would like to. But this is not such a terrible thing while you are still so small. To be small and ignorant is a creative, harmonious way to engage with your world. And holding steadily to not knowing and hence to learning will bring good results. But this flow from creating success to constancy bears fruit is interrupted when the young ignoramus goes running after answers, as if it were embarrassing not to know. In his anxious persistence, he shows a profound disrespect for his teacher and also for the answer he is seeking that he imagines can be had so quickly. So the I who speaks here gives one clear answer, and then they refuse to answer, or perhaps there is just such confusion that no answers can be understood. That speaker can be another person you're asking for a response you need, It can also be the oracle itself or what speaks through it. Image. Below the mountain, spring water comes forth, not knowing. A noble one nourishes character with the fruits of action. The pure spring rises under the shelter of the mountain. It doesn't know where it's going, yet its flow becomes steadily deeper and stronger. In the same way, a noble one nurtures personal character and strength with the fruits of going forward and taking action. Learning comes from experience, not in the form of ready-made answers. Sequence. Not knowing follows from hexagram 3, sprouting. Things that are newly born must needs be ignorant, and so not knowing follows. Not knowing means ignorance and the youth of things. You are at an early stage of development, like an infant just beginning to toddle out into the wider world. Suddenly, you find yourself ignorant. The world is a much less orderly place than it appeared from the cradle. So if you have a confused sense of losing your center, this is a sign that you're seeing the real world more clearly than before. Indeed. We will go back to our primary hexagram 7 and read our changing line 6, which puts a pin in the map to say you are here, or at least here are some places you may find yourself. Takes precedence over all other elements. And changing line 6 has the general context of beyond the main action, reviewing experience, asking what comes next. Changing line 6 of hexagram 7, the army. The great leader has a mandate to found a state and receive the households. Don't use small people. The time for fighting is over. Now the army's energies must be redirected into building a new world. A more open time is coming, founded on sincere relationships, and there is a profusion of tasks and challenges, all of them new. The task is no longer to pursue a known objective, but to lay the foundations for unknowable future growth. There is no longer any place for aggressive responses or for people who are reactive and think small. Don't turn to such people. Don't call on your own inner small person. God damn. Quote unquote, right? Moving on, we'll get into James Dekorne. And he has synthesized several I Ching commentaries. A lot of them are scholastic in nature, rather than, 1796 alchemical or modern entry level or whatever you would call that. So, the synthesis can feel a little dictionary-y, but I assure you, when we get towards the wrapping up of the summation that James Dekorne gives, he's a practitioner of the Tao himself, and often his nuggets of wisdom are quite juicy indeed. He also uses awesome quotes from things like the Kabbalah, shit like that. He calls hexagram 7 discipline. Other titles might be the army, the symbol of a multitude and of army, legions, leading, the troops, collective force, discipline, soldiers, group action, a disciplined multitude, ego discipline, willpower. A quote from D.F. Hook can refer to mourning, but its essential meaning is discipline, judgment, leg. Discipline indicates that with firm correctness and a leader of age and experience, there will be good fortune and no error. Blofeld. Persistence in a righteous course brings to those in authority good fortune and freedom from error. If the inquiry is not concerned with military affairs, we must interpret this hexagram symbolically in the sense that life is a battle. Ritzema/Karcher. Legions, trial. Respectable people, significant. Without fault. This hexagram describes your situation in terms of unorganized crowds or bunches of things. It emphasizes that organizing these things into functional units is the adequate way to handle it. To be in accord with the time, you are told to lead. Wu, the army indicates persevering. Led by the elder man, it will be auspicious. The image. Leg. Water in the midst of the earth, the image of discipline. The superior man nourishes and educates the people and collects from among them a mighty army. Lu, water in the earth symbolizes the army. The superior man increases his followers by benevolence toward the people. Ritsum/Karcher. Earth center possessing stream, legions. A chunsu, or chief son, or superior person, uses tolerating commoners to accumulate crowds. Very pat on the heady. Gather around. That's what that one sounded like. Wu, there is water underneath the ground. This is the army. Thus the chunsi, or chief son, or superior person, receives people and shelters them. This is much nicer. Commentary. Confucius/Leg. Discipline describes the masses who make up the army, and the firm correctness referred to means a morally correct intent. When the leader uses the masses with such correctness, he may fulfill the ruler's will. The focus of strength in the fifth line is the line of the ruler. It's like the higher self, the self, the I am. The focus of strength in the second line is responded to by his proper correlate in the ruler's place. Although action is dangerous, it accords with the best sentiments of men, and although the leader may distress the country, the people will still follow him. There will be good fortune and no error. Leg. Discipline is symbolized here by the conduct of a military expedition. The arrangement of the lines suggests the idea of a general surrounded by his troops. The dynamic yang line in the center of the lower trigram has the confidence of the magnetic ruler in the fifth place. Entire trust is reposed in him because he is strong and correct. He is referred to as an old and experienced man, hence all of his enterprises will succeed. Perilousness is the attribute of the lower trigram, and docility or accordance with others that of the upper. War is like poison to a country, painful and potentially ruinous, and yet the people will endure it on behalf of the sovereign whom they love and respect. In regard to the image, Chu Hsi says, as the water is not outside the earth, so soldiers are not outside the people. Therefore, if a ruler is able to nourish the people, he can get the multitudes for his armies. Notes and paraphrases. Judgment. Discipline directed by willpower and serious intent advances the work, or with experienced judgment and proper will and intent, there will be a good outcome. The superior man trains and nourishes his powers to build an invincible unity. The English word infantry, meaning foot soldiers, the backbone of any army, is derived from the French word enfant, meaning infant or child. This ancient association was made because a good military officer was expected to treat his soldiers as if they were his own children, with a stern but loving discipline designed to improve their character. This concept is what the image alludes to when it says, the superior man nourishes and educates the people and collects from among them a mighty army. Psychologically interpreted, the idea is that the ego complex is the general officer in the second line that nourishes, educates, and controls the other complexes within the psyche. This can only be accomplished through discipline, and thus I have chosen the name for the hexagram rather than the more usual title of the army. With the only dynamic line of the hexagram placed in the center of the lower trigram, we have an image of the position of the ego complex in relation to the rest of the psyche. The magnetic ruler in line 5 represents the self, isolated from direct physical involvement and dependent upon the dynamic ego to carry out the work in the material dimension. The 7th hexagram, therefore, shows the work from the ego's point of view. Hexagram number 8, holding together, is the inverse of this image and shows the work from the self's point of view outside of space-time. There, it is the dynamic 5th line ruler who is the focal point, an image of the self surrounded by its satellites. In that dimension, the 2nd line ego complex is only another magnetic complex in the company of other magnetic complexes. Ideally, the lower complexes within the psyche should be magnetic in relation to a dynamic ego, but the ego is always magnetic in relation to the dynamic self. From the self's point of view, all of its complexes are its magnetic children or infantry. Hexagrams 7 and 8 should be studied together as reversed images to get a full comprehension of each. The images and the lines of discipline all deal with the management of forces as a coordinated whole. As long as they are under the firm command of the ego, who is only a general carrying out the orders of the self, things proceed successfully. If the discipline breaks down and the ego general loses control, defeat is certain. A quote from Yamamoto Tsunetomo in the Book of the Samurai. Naritomo Hyogo said, "What is called winning is defeating one's allies. Defeating one's allies is defeating oneself, and defeating oneself is vigorously overcoming one's own body. It is as though a man were in the midst of 10,000 allies, but not one were following him. If one hasn't previously mastered his mind and body, he will not defeat the enemy." Moving on to our supporting hexagram 4, which puts our primary hexagram in a broader context and influence a direction of travel, an underlying issue that has to do with you and your relationship to it all. We come to hexagram 4, which James Dekorne calls inexperience. Other titles might be youthful folly, the symbol of covering, immaturity, uncultivated growth, youth, acquiring experience, youthful ignorance, enveloping, folly, and darkness. Quote from D.F. Hook. Often the I Ching uses this hexagram to show us that we should not be asking this question. Judgment, leg. Inexperience means progress and success. I do not seek the inexperienced youth, but he seeks me. When he shows the sincerity proper for divination, I instruct him. If he asks 2 or 3 times, that is troublesome, and I do not instruct the troublesome. Firm correctness brings advantage. Blowfold, immaturity, good fortune. I am not one to seek out uncultivated youths, but if such a youth seeks me out, I shall at first read and explain the omens. Yet should he ask me many times, just because of his importunity, I shall not explain anything more. The omen indicates a need for proper direction. This hexagram suggests stubbornness, the upper trigram, issuing from the softness of the womb, the lower trigram. While it sometimes happens that youthful rashness succeeds where sober counsels fail, it is nevertheless the duty of the mature man to cultivate the minds of the young and to respond within reason to their requests for guidance. As an omen, this hexagram may be taken to imply a case in which a certain amount of rashness may lead to success, but in which older people are not absolved from the duty of guiding the young. There is also a suggestion that the Book of Change itself, though fully responsive to those who make the right approach, will not brook importunity in the form of trivial questions or of seeking to reverse its judgments by further questioning. Whether the omen may be taken to mean that we should go ahead with some rash scheme, or that it is time for us to restrain someone's youthful rashness, will depend upon the nature of the inquiry, the people concerned in it, and the particular moving lines involved in the response. Lu. It is not I who seek him, the youth seeks me. The first time he asks, I answer. But if he asks again and again, it is annoyance. No answer. Benefit for continuance. Ritsuma/Karcher, enveloping, growing. In no way me seeking youthful enveloping, seeking me. The initial oracle consultation notifying twice, 3 times, obscuring by consequence, not notifying, harvesting trial. This hexagram describes your situation in terms of concealment and clouded awareness. It emphasizes that actively accepting this concealment in order to nurture growth is the adequate way to handle it. The image, leg, a spring issuing from the mountain, the image of inexperience. The superior man, in accordance with this, nourishes his virtue and strives for resoluteness of conduct. Wilhelm/Baines, a spring wells up at the foot of the mountain, the image of youth. Thus the superior man fosters his character by thoroughness in all that he does. Blowfold, this hexagram symbolizes a watery hole at the foot of a mountain amidst uncultivated growth. The superior man, by determined good conduct, nourishes his virtue. The second sentence is deduced from the first. Both are suggested by the component trigrams. Ritsuma/Karcher. Below mountain, issuing forth spring water, enveloping. A Chunsu, or chief sun, or superior person, uses fruiting movement to nurture actualizing Tao. Actualized Tao is the ability to follow the course traced by the ongoing process of the cosmos, linked with acquire, which is D, acquiring that which makes a being become what it is meant to be. Cleary 1. Under a mountain a spring is produced in darkness. A superior person nurtures character with fruitful action. Commentary, Confucius/Leg. Inexperience shows the trigram of the mountain above that of the abyss. The perilous impasse suggested by these figures evokes the idea of inexperience. Progress and success are suggested because the action and development of the hexagram conform to the requirements of the time. When inexperience seeks wisdom, will responds to will. The oracle responds to sincerity because it has the qualities of the dynamic line in the central second place, but the oracle does not respond to ignorant importuning. The proper duty of a sage is to nourish the correct nature of the ignorant. Leg. Difficulty shows us plants struggling within the earth, and inexperience suggests the small and undeveloped sprouts which then appear upon its surface. This is an image of youthful ignorance, and the object of the hexagram is to show how those in authority should deal with it. The judgment takes the form of the oracle's response to the questioner. The upper trigram represents a frowning mountain which blocks the progress of the traveler. The lower trigram symbolizes a stream of water in a dangerous canyon, such as might be found at the foot of a mountain. The combination of these symbols suggests the perilous nature of ignorant inexperience. The subject of line 2 represents the oracle, who demands sincerity from the unenlightened. It is his duty to evoke the innate, correct nature hidden within the questioner, to bring this quality out and develop it. In regard to the image, Chu Hsi says that the water of a spring is sure to move on and gradually advance. This may serve as a symbol of the general process and progress of education. Notes and paraphrases. Judgment. Inexperience portrays the relationship between the ego and the self as one of student to master. Communication via the oracle demands seriousness of purpose. The self refuses to pander to the ego's illusions. The superior man furthers the work by developing his will and intent. Wilhelm's title for this hexagram is Youthful Folly, which tends to lend it a negative connotation that is not always strictly applicable. However, he is quick to point out that the title should be understood to mean the immaturity of youth and its consequent lack of wisdom, rather than mere stupidity. While the title of inexperience avoids the negative connotation, it must be acknowledged that there is an aura of irritation in this hexagram which illustrates an uncomfortable truth about the relationship between the ego and the self. The self is an awesome archetype, and once one has established contact with him, he assumes a distinctly stern personality. The self will not pander to the ego's illusions and has no patience with anything but the unvarnished truth. Tact and patience are not among his attributes. Lao Tzu describes him very accurately. The sage is unkind. He treats the people like sacrificial straw dogs, which is just the way it is. As a satellite of the self, the ego complex was not created just so that it could spend a lifetime indulging its fantasies. The work must be undertaken, and the self knows more than you do what remains to be done. Like any excellent teacher, he demands more of us than we think we have in us to give. This phenomenon of the tyrannical and often unjust self has been noted in many times and places. Here is an example from Neoplatonism. A quote from Imblicus in the Egyptian Mysteries. What shall we say in regard to the question, why did the divinities that are invoked require the worshipper to be just, although they themselves, when entreated, consent to perform unjust acts? In reply to this, I am uncertain in respect to what is meant by performing unjust acts, as the same definition may not appear right both to us and to the gods. We, on the one hand, looking to that which is least significant, consider the things that are present, the momentary life, what it is and how it originates. The beings superior to us, let me say, know for certain the whole life of the soul and all its former lives, and if they bring on a retribution from the supplication of those who invoke them, they do not increase it beyond what is just. On the contrary, they aim at the sins impressed upon the soul in former lifetimes, which men do not perceive, and so imagine that is unjust that they fall into misfortunes which they suffer. A contemporary expression of this idea comes from consciousness researcher John Lilly, famous for his work with dolphins and isolation tank experiments with psychedelic drugs. Quote from John Lilly: "Cosmic love, e.g. the spiritual self, is absolutely ruthless and highly indifferent. It teaches its lessons whether you like/dislike them or not. By definition, the gods' archetypes are not human. Were it possible for them to evolve without human vessels in space-time, presumably we humans would not exist. It is these archetypes in the guise of our complexes and limiting beliefs that are being altered by the work. Because the unconscious psyche is a multiverse, it is sometimes very difficult to differentiate just who is advising us, and the self, via the oracle, will occasionally test us for our ability to use intuitive common sense, which is to say, when the gods or the self become totally unreasonable, we can only go along with them to the limit of our human understanding. Slavish obedience to all injunctions from the unconscious is to sell our souls outright to something that we don't understand. The renunciation of common sense is the renunciation of our most precious birthright. On the other hand, to disobey at will is to put our souls at risk. This is one of the most painful of all dilemmas. How far do we go in our obedience to unseen powers? Aspects of this problem have been called the dark night of the soul, an inner initiation, a trial by fire to see what we are really made of. There are times in the advanced course of the work when one receives the strange insight that the self actually wants us to disobey. This ordeal can only be lived through. No one can advise you except your own sense of what is right for you at any given moment. The most useful guidance that I have found is that the precepts of the work, as found in the perennial philosophy, are consistent worldwide and constitute a reliably moral structure for responsible choice. If the oracle seems to be telling you to do something contrary to your inner sense of right and wrong, contrary to your understanding of the precepts of the work, then go with this intuition rather than the oracle. The self, via the oracle, will test you in many ways to make you develop. The ultimate goal is to become so infallibly intuitive that oracles become superfluous. The gods need our intelligent disobedience if they themselves are to evolve. It is in the stress between obedience and conscientious disobedience that growth takes place. In one sense, whatever choice you make, as long as it is conscious and you fully accept the consequences, is the right choice for you at that moment. We learn through our mistakes and can never fail our lessons if we truly integrate the experience into our unfolding lives. Confucius, one of the greatest teachers who ever lived, obviously took his teaching method from the judgment of this hexagram. The master said, "I won't teach a man who is not anxious to learn, and will not explain to one who is not trying to make things clear to himself. And if I explain 1/4 and the man doesn't go back and reflect and think out the implications in the remaining 3/4 for himself, I won't bother to teach him again." And so it is with the oracle, the self. The deeper one gets involved in the work, the more difficult the lessons become, so that one is always kept in a position of relative inexperience. There are times when a simple answer would suffice, that you will receive an ambiguous image, which, if you do 3/4 of the work, will lead you to a profound insight. We will go back to our primary hexagram 7 to read our changing lines 6, which puts a pin in the map to say you are here, or at least here are some places you may find yourself, takes precedence over all other elements. Changing line 6 has the general context beyond the main action, reviewing experience, asking what comes next. Changing line 6 of hexagram 7, discipline, is what James Dekorne calls it. The 6th line, magnetic, shows the great ruler delivering his charges, appointing some to be rulers of states and others to undertake the headship of clans, but inferior men should not be employed in such positions. Ritzema/Karcher, the great chief possesses fate, disclosing the city, receiving a dwelling, small people no availing of. Slofnacy, the great man's lord has a mandate, to open the state and uphold the families. The little man should not use it. Wu, the great king has given his order. This is the time to reconstruct the nation and resettle families. Little men should not be appointed to office. Commentary, Confucius/Leg. The ruler rightly apportions merit. Inferior men are sure to throw the states into confusion. Wilhelm/Baines, in order to reward merit properly, because they are certain to cause confusion in the country. Blofeld, we cannot now rely on anyone of less than exceptional ability. Ritzema/Karcher, using, correcting, achieving indeed. Necessarily disarraying the fiefdoms indeed. Cleary 2, appropriate achievement, they will disrupt the nation. Wu, merits should be recognized, because they will certainly cause upheavals in the nation. Leg, other ways can be found to reward inferior men. They ought not to be placed in situations where the conditions of others will depend on them. Notes and paraphrases. Su, victory is achieved. The king rewards his supporters, but he is careful to compensate inferior people with money instead of land or ruling privileges. Otherwise, power is abused by them. Wing, your aim is achieved. When settling into the new situation, be certain to align your proprieties to worthwhile values. Inferior persons and ideas should be assigned to their proper places. Do not give them a voice in your affairs. Editor. The imagery of this line is that of establishing a new order, a sorting out and allocating of forces to their correct places. Proper allocation demands keen discrimination. The meaning is similar to that of line 1, except that here one uses the discriminating faculty after the action has been completed, whereas in line 1, action has yet to commence. Lines 1 and 6 are like bookends, holding the hexagram together, reminding us that discipline is required both before and after any meaningful change can be fixed in space-time. A quote from Matthew 25:32-35. All the nations will be assembled before him, and he will separate men one from another as the shepherd separates sheep from goats. He will place the sheep on his right hand and the goats on his left. Then the king will say to those on his right hand, come, you whom my Father has blessed. Take for your heritage the kingdom prepared for you since the foundation of the world. James Dekorne breaks changing line 6 down into 3 possible succinct definitions. A, image of a judicious division of labor, a meritocracy. B, accentuate the positive, eliminate the negative. And C, allocate your energy intelligently. Evaluate your options so that your choices are based on the best interests of the work. We'll now go to I-ming's Taoist I Ching and read our hexagrams. 7. Again, I-ming calls the army. For the leader of the army to be right, a mature person is good. Then there is no error. Explanation. The army is a group. This has the meaning of one person leading a group. The qualities of the hexagram are earth above, submissive, and water below, dangerous. Following obediently in danger, it is therefore called the army. This hexagram represents using yang to drive back yin. It accords with the time, and advancing yang is the way to drive yin back. No, drive back yin. It follows on the previous hexagram, waiting. Waiting is advancing yang in accord with the time, and advancing yang is the way to drive yin back. The method of repelling yin is to get rid of wrong by means of right, to destroy falsehood by truth, like righteousness in the leader of an army. The leader of the army is the way of punishment and execution. It requires both firmness and flexibility, both humanity and justice, command of authority and ability to change in order to be effective. Otherwise, if one can be firm but not flexible, or if one is only humane and does not know how to apply justice, or if one is only dutiful and does not know how to act humanely, none of this is right, and without correctness, good fortune cannot be attained. Instead, one will provoke censure. Only mature and developed people understand good and bad, distinguish wrong from right, know what bodes well and what bodes ill, perceive when to hurry and when to relax, are not confined to either firmness or flexibility, apply both humanity and justice together, are able to obey in danger and by obedience neutralize danger, use the temporal to restore the primordial, use the primordial to transmute the temporal. Not only do not let yin trap yang, but even get all yin to follow yang. This is the path of good fortune without error. If people are immature, their perception of truth is not clear. They do not distinguish wrong from right, and so enter aberrated detours. They set out impulsively and not only are unable to make yin retreat, they even accentuate yin. They are sure to bring on error. How can they affect good results and achieve the Tao? When people have not yet lost the primordial, this is pure natural reality. It is like when the nation is at peace. Even if there are intelligent knights and good generals, there is no need for them. Then when people get mixed up in acquired conditioning, their senses trouble them and their emotions run wild. It is like when there is trouble in the land, with rebels causing disturbance. If there is no way of rooting them out by punishment and execution, it is impossible to restore peace in perilous times. Therefore, the method of striving in spiritual alchemy is to burn away all the pollution of acquired conditioning and not let the slightest flaw remain in the heart, so that one may eventually re-experience original completeness. This is why the path of direction is valued. Turn to hexagram 4, our supporting hexagram that puts our primary hexagram in a broader context and influence, a direction of travel, an underlying issue that has to do with you and your relationship to it all, darkness. In darkness is development. It is not that I seek naive innocence. Naive innocence seeks me. The first augury informs, the second and third defile. Defilement does not inform. It is beneficial to be correct. Explanation. Darkness means obscurity and unknowing. And the body of the hexagram mountain is above, with 2 yin advancing under 1 yang. Water is below, with 1 yang fallen between 2 yins. Both have forms of yin injuring yang, therefore it is called darkness. As for the qualities of the hexagram, danger is within stillness. There is danger, yet ability to stop. This includes the meaning of stopping darkness. This hexagram represents starting the operation of yin convergence. The hexagram follows on the previous hexagram, earth. Earth means going on the path of submission and receptivity. Carrying out yin convergence means returning recalcitrant yin to submission. After the primordial yang in people culminates, conditioned yin arises. The original spirit is obscured and discriminatory awareness does things. One drops the real and recognizes the false, using intellect mistakenly, producing all sorts of cleverness. Though overtly there is light, inside is really dark. This is where darkness comes from. Once you have entered darkness, essence is disturbed and life is destabilized. In a single day, you are born 1,000 times and die 10,000 times, not knowing how to stop. This is most perilous. If you know there is danger and are able to stop it, silencing the intellect, being as though ignorant and dumb, though you be without knowledge outwardly, inwardly, you really have knowledge. From false darkness, you return to true darkness. Thus it is that in darkness, there is paradoxically a way of development. The best development of darkness is innocence. The darkness of innocence unconsciously follows the laws of God, tranquil and unstirring, yet sensitive and effective. All actions flow from the fundamental essence. This is the signified status of a sage, the aspect of the celestial human. Those who travel the path of darkness must go back to the darkness of innocence. Only then is it the darkness that is returning to the origin. However, this darkness of return to the origin is not a matter of seeking naive innocence oneself. It is naive innocence that seeks oneself. Not seeking innocence oneself means that it does not come about by formal effort and is not attached to forms. Innocence seeking oneself means that it comes naturally and does not fall into voidness. Not clinging to forms, not falling into voidness, not material, not empty. Since it is not a matter of seeking the real, one does not exclude the artificial either. Ever calm, yet always responsive yet ever calm. It is not darkness, yet resembles darkness. It is darkness, but actually not darkness. External things cannot enter inside. Thoughts cannot arise. One does not seek reality, but reality is here. But this path that is neither form nor void has two methods, nurturing darkness and opening darkness, which should be known. When yin and yang are mixed and natural reality has not yet been injured and external influences have not yet entered, darkness belongs to reality. It is like a first augury when the yarrow sticks are not yet divided, surely giving direction at first. One should be open, calm, sincere, and serious, thereby going on the path of non-contrivance. Once yin and yang have divided, there is a lack of natural reality. External influences creep in, and darkness winds up in falsehood. It is like when the yarrow sticks are messed up after 2 or 3 auguries. Without awaiting their directions, one may change arrangements, thus going on the path of striving. The path of non-contrivance nurtures the darkness of reality. The path of striving transforms the darkness of falsehood. Nurturing reality, transforming falsehood, striving and non-striving are to be used according to the time and situation as appropriate. One may proceed from striving and end up non-striving, or one may succeed in striving by way of non-striving. In either case, the ultimate accomplishment is to use the highest good without evil, wholly integrated with natural principle, to go back to the origin, return to the fundamental, and revert to innocence. Those who travel the path of darkness must do so in the correct way. We'll now go back to our primary hexagram 7 and read our changing line 6, which puts a pin in the map to say you are here, or at least here are some places you may find yourself. Takes precedence over all other elements. Changing line 6 has the general context beyond the main action, reviewing experience, asking what comes next. Changing line 6 of hexagram 7, our primary hexagram. My thumb, so cold I can barely turn the page. The army. Hexagram 6, changing line 6. The great leader has orders to establish states and families. Do not employ petty people. Explanation. At the end of direction of the army, acquired energy has all been sublimated. The basis stable, the country peaceful, the mental ruler at peace. There is no more need for punishment and execution. Then, when external ills have been removed and the master sits peacefully in the center, it is possible to discern subtleties, keeping even a single thought of good and getting rid of even a single bad thought, rewarding those of meritorious achievement and chastising those of no merit. This is also like a great leader with orders to establish states and families, for which petty people should not be employed. It is necessary to root out the seeds of ages of vicious circles before one is done. This means making negativity withdraw requires inward and outward purity and calm. The 6 lines each have a path of repulsing yin, but they are not equal in terms of boding good or ill. Only the yang in the second place has both firmness and flexibility, masters authority yet is capable of change, and thereby is able to transmute negativities and not be injured by negativities. Great is the accomplishment of striving. All right, there's 2 more sections, well, one section, the commentary section in the back that has a little bit more alchemical flavor to each of our hexagrams. So in that vein, we shall proceed. Hexagram 7, our primary, the army. Earth above, water below. There is water in the earth, the army. Thus does the superior person embrace the people and nurture the masses. The army is one leading a multitude. Above is earth, below is water. This is the presence of water in the earth. The earth is broad, water is wet. In the earth there is water. One earth embraces myriad waters. Myriad waters moisten one earth. This is the image of the army. What superior people see in this is that the human body is like a country and the mind is like the ruler. The vitality, spirit, nature, feeling, and energy in the body are like the people. The benevolence, justice, courtesy, knowledge, and truthfulness in the nature are like the masses. These people, these masses, are the basis of human life and must be protected and cared for. Therefore, the root is stabilized by embracing the people. External afflictions are prevented by nurturing the masses. But it is first necessary to embrace the people in the sense of first mastering oneself inwardly. After that, one nurtures the masses in the sense of managing externally. Inward mastery protects one from externals. Managing externally affords one inner peace. When the inner and the outer balance each other, then everything follows the mind, whether in adversity or comfort. Such is the path of the leader of the army, and such is the path of the superior person embracing and nurturing. And our supporting hexagram, again, it puts our primary hexagram in a broader context and influence the direction of travel, an underlying issue that has to do with you and your relationship to it all. Hexagram 4, supporting hexagram is darkness. Mountain above, water below. Under a mountain, a spring is produced. In darkness, a superior person nurtures character with fruitful action. Darkness means developmental nurturance without intellectualism. Above is mountain, below is water. Here, water is referred to as a spring and not water, because the spring under the mountain is water. When a spring is produced under a mountain, the spring is nurtured by the mountain, being water with a basis, flowing far from a deep source, going through without hindrance. This is the image of darkness. What superior people see in this is that when those who practice the Tao want to exercise virtue outwardly, first they must develop character inwardly. If one acts without development, the action will have no basis. Without inner mastery, action will injure character. This is the reason for emulating a spring emerging from a mountain, acting fruitfully without obstruction, taking as a model the mountain, nurturing the spring, nurturing character with caring warmth. The yang in the center of water refers to what is produced by celestial unity, the original generative energy that gives birth to beings. This is what is called the celestial virtue or power. This virtue is hidden in the temporal. Since ordinary people follow temporally acquired conditioning and abandon the primordial, most do not know how to develop, nurture, cultivate, and sustain this primal virtue. So as a result, they gradually dissipate it and harm their own essence in life. Those who awaken to this set aside acquired conditioning to practice inner development and outward action, using development to perfect action, using action to test development, cultivating both inside and outside. Nurturing character is developmental, and acting on it is developmental as well. Nurturing character means no worthy quality is left undeveloped. Fruitful action demands that every act be fruitful. Nurturance of character demands that it be nurtured until it is stable as a mountain. Only then is development complete. Fruitful action demands that it be effective as a spring flowing day and night. Only then is fruition complete. Action fruitful, character developed, one completes one's nature and understands the meaning of life, integrated with the celestial design, unconsciously following the laws of God. This is why darkness is valued. We will get a randomly card-drawn chapter from the Tao Te Ching to read to close us off. There's already 25. As if you didn't believe me. This copy is from Jia-Fu Fang and Jane English. Hexagram 25. Chapter 25 of the Tao Te Ching. All right, I am so cold. 25. Something mysteriously formed, born before heaven and earth, in the silence and the void, standing alone and unchanging, ever present and in motion. Perhaps it is the mother of 10,000 things. I do not know its name. Call it Tao. For lack of a better word, I call it great. Being great, it flows. It flows far away. Having gone far, it returns. Therefore, Tao is great, heaven is great, earth is great, the king is also great. These are the four great powers of the universe, and the king is one of them. Man follows the earth follows heaven, heaven follows the Tao, Tao follows what is natural. Jeez. Fingers are like frozen sausages. Mwah. I do want to say before we go, the reason I put out the chariot card is that I envision sitting on this rock, flying through space, being like the charioteer, right? And you want to keep kind of a loose grip on the reins. You kind of trust the instincts of the Tao, of the universe, whatever you want to call it, to know better than you, but the proper relation from the ego to the self is one of student to master. And so the self is ultimately to be in control. The ego, however, controls the will, and that means a lot of responsibility. It means that it needs to be correctly calibrated. The I Ching is a very beneficial alchemical tool to do just that, as you're also processing what the Tao is up to and how best to act in accordance with it, as opposed to what can I get out of it. It's what is the energy and how can I act as the sage or the superior person to get the best benefit with the flow of what the universe is doing. Therefore, I use it and find it to be of great benefit, especially in times of great change. I Ching is called the Book of Changes, and the only constant is that. And in order to understand our changing world, the Taoist sages and the those that developed the I Ching were people of high meditative practice and mystical abilities, and they brought together a harmonious accord of various interchanges that could potentially happen that all kind of represent nature and are very similar in kind of like a biological way of understanding time. So time, not in so much in terms of like the hands of a clock, very mechanical, but of the actual lifeblood of time and how it changes and metamorphosizes and transforms, and what it's bringing about, and how best to harness and work with that to live in accord with the times. So anyway, I wish you all well. I hope that we can all grab loosely to our own personal reins, and in the process develop our own internal worlds, as each of our own internal worlds is just a reflection of the, you know, collective subconscious. And so each of our ability to work with it in a productive way will be, I believe, the saving of humanity, hopefully of the planet, hopefully of all of this, and we could do some fucking good with the responsibility that we're given in this time of great change. I would love to, you know, have the kind of sense of reaching out to each other that is going on be manifested somehow in a productive way in the 3D. I'm not sure even what that looks like, to be honest with you. I'd love some collaboration. Maybe we could talk, if people are interested, you know, throw a comment or hit me up at dowdruidry@gmail.com. I would love to speak about actively moving on what maybe multiple of us are finding to be a certain collective pull into what is to be and what's coming, and in a very, you know, beneficial, loving way, and something that helps all of humanity if possible. And to do that, we have to first understand ourselves better. A lot of people want to help but do more harm than good, because their own internals are so out of whack that it's difficult to know where to put energy in a healthy way. Sometimes you overthrew one, you know, tyrant in order to insert a new one kind of idea. Not to say any of that is happening. I just mean internally. If we don't know how to internally set the correct ruler in place in our own little world, then how are we going to do that externally? So, things to think on. I love you all. Peace in your butt crease.